Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in for another JINSA Israel at War update. I'm JINSA's Vice President for Policy, Blaise Misztal, and I'm delighted to be joined by two of our Israeli generals, IDF Major General retired Yaacov Amidror, a distinguished fellow here at JINSA and former Israeli National Security Advisor, as well as IDF Major General retired Yaacov Ayish, the Jenny and Julian Josephson, Senior Vice President for Israeli Affairs at JINSA, and former Head of Operations for the Israeli Chief of Staff. Thank you both for joining us. General Amidror, maybe I can start with you to give us a tour around the region, since there is continued activity on almost all of the fronts that Israel has been active on, Gaza, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere. So if you could maybe give us an overview, and then we'll dive into more depth on each of them.
Okay, it's a good idea. I'll begin from the south, from Yemen. We in the last few hours, the IDF succeeded to thwart the three attempts of the Yemenite Houthis to launch drones into Israel. It was done far from the border, so there wasn't any alarm inside Israel. So we didn't have to run to the shelter. But it's significant because it's the continuation of the Houthis to be the more active force fighting Israel as proxy of Iran, and continue to do it. We have to ask ourselves what can deter them, what can be done to minimize it. We don't have forces over Yemen, and the American forces are very close. We have to fly 2,000 kilometers to reach Sana'a, and it's not in our list of the easiest capabilities. So we know our limitations. We invest a lot in our ability to thwart the threats, but we understand that it cannot be ended by defensive capabilities. And what should be done, we ask ourselves, and we know our limitations. Gaza, we continue to clean Gaza. The Hamas is not a threat to the Israeli inside Israel, to the Israelis inside Israel. They cannot organize a raid into Israel. They cannot launch too many rockets and missiles into Israel, and there they are doing it. They don't have the ability to produce new capabilities. They lost the ability to smuggle in from Egypt and so on and so forth. No one asked the question, what will be the reaction of Hamas if we do something, whatever we are doing. But still, Hamas is very active inside the Gaza Strip, and from time to time succeed to kill Israeli soldiers. They did it twice in the last week. The level of our forces in operational actions inside Gaza is not too high, but we are still doing it all the time in some areas, and it is very nasty war in which we are losing soldiers and commanders, and we succeed to kill many terrorists. The problem is that because we bring in, based on our promise to the United States of America, a lot of humanitarian aid, Hamas is succeeding to take control of this aid, and through that to make enough money to recruit more young people inside Gaza to the lines of Hamas. So they don't have any experience. They didn't make any training. They don't have the ability to produce commanders. Today we killed another commander in Hamas. And so on and so forth, but still they have the ability to control the life of the civilians inside Gaza, and the ability to make money from that and to recruit more people into the lines. So it's a kind of of something that should be stopped somehow, and it will be probably connected to more control and less ability of Hamas to gain control on the humanitarian aid. How we will do it, we are arguing between ourselves. We don't want to take full control of Gaza now, but it is the main problem now, other than the guerrilla warfare that we are facing inside Gaza from the remnants of Hamas. In the north, in Lebanon, nothing was changed, but the IDF is more than hinting and saying that the Lebanese army didn't fulfill its kind of his obligations for the ceasefire. For example, they didn't allocate enough forces into the south. Not enough forces had been deployed by the Lebanese army. That in many cases in which we are complaining about something, they don't act, or don't act fast enough. And in some cases, we solve the problem by ourselves, but it is not the idea of the whole ceasefire. The idea of the whole ceasefire is that we are giving the information to the Americans. Americans transfer it to the Lebanese army. The Lebanese army is doing the job. If they don't, of course, we are doing it, but it's not the spirit of the agreement. So the IDF is saying that he might stay in some areas more than the 60 days which had been agreed in the agreement with the Lebanese. What will be the reaction? I don't know. Now there is a new president for Lebanon after years without a president, and the president is the key figure in the Lebanese system according to the constitution. It is an ex-commander of the army, General Owen, and the American trust him. We, based on our information, he should be less trusted, but he's the guy, and with that is what you can do. How far he will go against Hezbollah? A good question. I'm not sure that he will. How far will be ready to impose kind of a control on the ground and not let Hezbollah to control areas in Lebanon? Good question. I don't have an answer. So it's a new opportunity, but let's see what will happen. It's too early to judge. We know for sure that Hezbollah feels very bad about the situation. From the minute that the regime in Damascus was changed and Sunni jihadists took control, it is clear that they are totally against Hezbollah and Iran. They had been butchered during the war in Syria by Hezbollah forces and by Iranians. So the hatred is very strong. What will be the relations between the Sunni regime in Damascus and the new administration in Lebanon? Good question. No one has an answer. How Hezbollah will try to repair his ability to get help from Iran? It's a good question. Up till now, they found solution how to transfer money. Money is coming in bulks, in airplanes from Iran to Lebanon, but they cannot transfer weapon systems through this channel. So they are looking for a solution. They don't have one. And the relations between Syria and Lebanon is one of the questions that will be very important to learn how it will going to be emerging in the future. It's a totally new situation, that for sure, and the situation is bad for Hezbollah and bad for Iran. How bad, for how long, and so on, we don't know yet. In Syria itself, we see more involvement of the Turks. The Turks are saying that they are going to launch a big attack on the Kurds in the northeast of Syria. The allies of the Kurds in this area are American forces. Together they fought against ISIS. How far the Americans will be ready to act to stop the Turks from eliminating the Kurds, which had been the allies, very strong allies of the United States of America in the fight against ISIS. A good question. The credibility of the United States of America is on the table here. And the Americans will have to make decisions. We are far away. We have sympathy to the Kurds, but we cannot help them over Syria. We are saying that we are sympathizing them, but practically our help is very limited. The only one who can help them in this case will be the United States of America forces. They are there very close. In Syria itself, as I said, we see more Turkish involvement. How far the Turks will be involved, what will be the relations between the new regime and the Turks, which helped him very much when they had been in Idlib. Good question. We don't have an answer. They try to have good relations with the Saudis. They visited Saudi Arabia. The people from the Emirates came to visit, and from Qatar came to visit in Damascus. It's a beginning of something new, and for us it's very important to understand where it is going to. As you know, we advance our positions in the Golan Heights, and we are sitting now on the peak of the Hermon mountain, and along the old border we moved around 10 kilometers to the east, having better position if we face any problem in the future, and to have cards for future negotiations about Syrian regime and attitude towards Israel. To the east, Iraq. In Iraq, it's very interesting. It's under the radar screen. The Iraqis gave an order to the militias, the Shiite militias in Iraq, to stop launching drones into Israel. And in the last 2 months, they don't. The Iraqis didn't give permission to the Iranians to move forces when the Syrians call help from Iran to fight the rebels, which are now controlling Damascus. The Iraqis closed the borders and didn't let the Iranians to move forces into Syria. I mean, something is happening in Iraq. They understand, because someone made an effort to explain to them that if they continue to host the Shiites' aggressive militias, they will have to pay a price. Someone will make them pay a price if they continue to give shelter, and they are becoming launchpad for the Shiite militias. How it will work between them and Iran in the future, how it will influence the relations inside Iraq. Good question that I don't have an answer to, but something is happening. And it's very important, and I hope that the Saudis will be more open towards the economic need of Iraq, and they might come in and to be very helpful in the efforts to change the relations between Iraq and Iran. For the Iranians, this is the most important country to control. If they're losing Iraq, it's the end of the dream of being a superpower in the Middle East. It's crucial for them. So I don't see that they will give up easily, but something is happening in Iraq, and it's very interesting to look at it, to see what's happening, and to try to help the Iraqis to make the right decisions. The last but not least is the West Bank. In the West Bank is the greatest mistake that Sinwar did. He didn't succeed to ignite the West Bank. It is our success and his failure. We see more aggressive terror actions against Jews in the West Bank, and they succeeded to kill some Jews more than in the past. But the whole number of terrorist action during 24 was less than the number in 23. And this is thanks to the efforts of the IDF and the Shabak, very aggressive steps to arrest and to eliminate terrorists of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. It stands versus the efforts of Iranians to bring money and to smuggle through Jordan and other ways weapon systems into the West Bank to change the abilities of the terror cells inside the West Bank. Up till now, they succeeded to smuggling, but they didn't succeed to make enough to change the balance of power. So yes, they succeeded to kill more civilians in the last few weeks, but they didn't succeed to ignite the area, and the area is basically calm and under control. It's a place in which in one day it can change, and something that you don't think that can ignite the area. So we have to be very cautious here, very sensitive. We're not always succeeding to be sensitive enough, but it is very important that we will continue with this policy of taking into account the need of the Palestinians, but having enough forces inside and enough information that allow us to make those operations inside the Palestinian centers to arrest and to destroy the efforts of Iran, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, not after they are succeeding to kill some Jews in the West Bank, but before they are going out of the refugee camps and acting against the Jews in the West Bank. But the West Bank is an issue which have to be in the focus of the IDF all the time, because if that will be ignited, it will change the balance here. So it is very important. I think that I cover all the fronts. Am I right, Ayish?
Yeah. Okay. That was a great tour de horizon. Coverage. Thank you, General Amidror. General Ayish, I wanted to ask you in more detail about some of the fronts that General Amidror talked about. But first, I wanted to call to everyone's attention that JINSA puts out Iran projectile tracker, which you can easily find on our website, that tries to keep track of all of the different missiles, drones, and rockets that Iran and its proxies launch at Israel and at U.S. forces in the region. And what we've done most recently is try to put all of those launches by group on a chart, and you can see very clearly that as soon as one group stops firing, another group takes up the mantle and replaces it. So obviously on October 7th, it was Hamas. But after Hamas stopped firing as many rockets right away, Hezbollah stepped in. When Hezbollah signed the ceasefire, then you saw the Iraqi militia step up right away. And as soon as they stopped firing, as General Amidror said, you see the Houthis step up. So there's sort of a very clear passing of the mantle from one Iranian proxy to the next in terms of attacking Israel that we can track. And the Houthis are just the latest. So let me start with them, General Ayish. The Houthis have been attacking Israel consistently for the last 14 months, 15 months now. I think the IDF released some numbers today saying over 300 drones, over 100 missiles have been launched. But it seems like more of them are getting into Israeli airspace recently. Is that due to a change in Houthi tactics? Is that due to a greater number being fired? Why are we seeing more of them get into Israeli airspace in the past month or so?
Okay, I think it's very much related to the detailed analysis that General Amidror just did in describing the different arenas, the different fronts. It's not a secret that we are right now fighting in 7 different fronts in different operational status, but that's what we are doing. We are fighting in the north, Syria and Lebanon, and we are present there. And by being a presence inside Lebanon and inside Syria, it means that your home front is defended also with the air defense and the missile defense assets. The same is happening in the south. The same is happening in the central part of Israel, watching Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. And I'm not sure that there is a comparison around the globe to such a challenging situation. So that's the situation. And when you are analyzing specifically the Houthis, you are talking about something like more than 400 attempts to attack Israel with UAVs, with ballistic missiles. Some of them took place only from Yemen. Some of them have happened at the same time, while threats came from Gaza, from Iraq, from Iran, and from Lebanon. So basically, the system is quite challenged. And that's why you can see that in certain cases, we are able to intercept the threats outside of the Israeli border. Sometimes it would take place inside Israel. And in certain cases, as it was predicted, we failed to intercept incoming threats. But all in all, when you are analyzing the number, it's within the envelope that was decided prior to that war, and we have to do more if we want to upgrade those capabilities. But I would like to drag the attention of our audience to the fact that we are active right now in different strategic posture in 7 different fronts, literally deployed, fighting, defending, and then in certain fronts, what we are doing is we are preparing ourselves for the next stage. So basically, we are talking here about the IDF that it's more than 15 months, quite stretched, and I must admit that so far I'm literally impressed from the way they are doing it for the whole 15 months, and they are still preparing for the next stages. It's not the end of it. People tend to think that it's the end of the war. No, it's not the end. Definitely the preemptive approach that we have seen in Lebanon, in Syria, reached a certain level of fruition. We can see the strategic results, the positive results of that strategic decision, and a very good operational implementation. But in other places, we are still fighting, as it was mentioned, in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria. Just for our participants, since the beginning of the war, let me take a secondary arena that we are not usually talking about, such as the Judea and Samaria. We have killed 841 terrorists only in Judea and Samaria. This is a secondary front. It's not the main front. We lost 60 Israelis. 24 of them are soldiers, only in Judea and Samaria. We tend to speak, obviously, from obvious reasons about Gaza and Lebanon, but we tend to forget that over there in Judea and Samaria, when you are thinking about the villages, the cities, the Israelis and the vicinity of those near Palestinian cities and villages, and when you are thinking about the potential threat, it's remarkable. And yet, I think the IDF succeeded, although they are a secondary arena, to achieve a very impressive achievement. Having said that, we lost yesterday 3 civilians. So this is the situation over there. And when you are going to see the situation in Gaza, we are moving from one village to the other, from one neighborhood to the other, clearing it from above ground, under the ground. That's what we did in Jabalia. That's what we are doing right now in Bet Lahiya and Bet Hanun. And there is a price for that, while we are achieving the goal of eliminating the threat of Hamas. The challenge in that sector is the alternative administration to Hamas. Because at the end of the day, when we are thinking in terms of the strategic goals, most of them were achieved to exclude the hostages and the alternative administration to Hamas. But Hamas as a military entity literally doesn't exist. What they are doing right now is a guerrilla warfare. We are talking about new cells, not well equipped, not well trained. Some of them were recruited lately. Some of them are very young men that were recruited with the money that Hamas is making from the humanitarian aid that he is selling to its own people. So that's basically the situation over there.
Yeah. I do want to ask you a little more about Gaza, but first, returning to Yemen briefly, General Ayish, could you tell us more about the state of U.S. Cooperation with Israel on dealing with the Houthi threat? We saw that one of the recent launches by the Houthis was actually shot down by the U.S. air defense system in Israel, the THAAD. It was the first ever combat shoot down by the THAAD. We saw Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, the deputy commander of CENTCOM, was in Israel just a couple of days ago. In fact, I think less than 24 hours after he was in Israel, we saw new U.S. strikes against the Houthis. Is that the result of cooperation and consultation with Israel? What's the state of cooperation there?
Blaise, the results of that consultation, that coordination that was built in the last 2 decades were demonstrated effectively in April and later on in September and October. What we are seeing with the Houthis is minor compared to what we have seen in April and September, October. Having said that, there is a very close coordination between the IDF and the CENTCOM. It's always a good opportunity to mention that we in JINSA were the first one to write and to advocate the moving of Israel to CENTCOM AOR just after the Abraham Accord was signed. And we can see the fruits of President Trump's decision today and in April and in October and September. And in the case of the Houthis, it was with the THAAD, but it's far more than that. When you think about situational awareness, when you think about intelligence, when you think about readiness, when you think about the ability to deal with threats from Yemen once they are launched, and when you are thinking about American presence at the Red Sea together with some other partners, it means that it's not only Israel that is dealing with it, and whatever is succeeding to arrive to the Israeli border obviously is something that we are dealing with. But until then, it's well coordinated with CENTCOM, and they are doing a very, very good and important job. And it's not only the operational question, it's also the strategic reflection from that, and the ability to do it and to continue doing it, not only in the last 15 months, but also in the months to come.
One more question about Yemen quickly, General Ayish. I saw news recently that the IDF is putting together special units of Yemenites to help deal with the Houthi threat. Can you tell us a little more about what the thinking behind that is, or what these units might be doing?
Okay, so when you have a new relevant threat and you have to collect intelligence and to analyze it, it means that you need to understand the language, the culture. And for that sake, you are not only allocating technological means, but also human capabilities. And for that sake, we have the advantage of having civilians in Israel, mainly Jews who came from Yemen, that control the culture, the language, and can contribute to the understanding of that. Going back to the question that you mentioned about the visit of Admiral Brad Cooper, it's not unique. he was here. He met, the vice chief of the general staff and the other generals. But it is something that is happening almost on a daily basis. If they are not visiting, when you think about the constant communication and coordination, it is something that is ongoing in the last 15 months, and they will continue doing it. I think it is a lesson that the IDF and CENTCOM will take from this war, and they will try to implement it in many other places in the Middle East in the future to come.
Shifting to Gaza, both you and General Amidror have talked about, how Hamas military commanders have been eliminated, how the units are mostly now recruiting younger, less experienced terrorists. And yet we're still seeing fairly significant IDF casualties in Gaza. It feels like 2 to 3 troops are being killed every other day. What is that? What is accountable for that? And what sort of operations is IDF undertaking in Gaza that leads to that?
Blaise, at the end of the day, General Amidror and myself are veterans also from 20 years of fighting in Lebanon. Even when you have operational control in a significant area, once you are dealing with guerrilla warfare, there is no 100% assurance that no one will get hurt. The presence is important. The ongoing operations are important. The ongoing pressure is very important, but there is it comes with a heavy price, as we have seen yesterday with an underbelly heavy IED that was blown up under Merkava Mark IV and killed 3 tankers, 3 soldiers that were manning that tank, although it's a very well protected tank from many different threats. It was such a heavy and significant underbelly bomb that was dunked under the ground that it succeeded to kill the 3 of them. It comes with the heavy price, but at the end of the day, when you think about the results of the last operations in Jubalia and Bet Hanun and Bet Lahia, we are talking about hundreds of terrorists, hundreds that were killed. And I'm not describing all the infrastructure to include tunnels that was demolished. And it is something taking place while at the same time operation is taking place in Rafah, again, under the ground. And we didn't mention the hostages that were found yesterday, unfortunately killed by Hamas, but they were taken out to Israel, to their families to be buried in their village.
Can you tell us any more about that operation, how the hostages were found, if there's any hope of finding more in a similar way?
It's still ongoing. It's very sensitive. That's why we are not describing exactly what have happened there. The fact that
General Ayish?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Okay, so it's difficult to go into details here. It's still sensitive because it's still ongoing. It's not the end of the operation, and we are not describing the exact location in purpose. But once we have relevant intelligence and there is an operational option, definitely the IDF is going to rescue those hostages. It's part of the strategic goals that were directed by the Israeli government to the IDF, and that's exactly what they are doing, either in Rafah or elsewhere. It's an ongoing mission, and unfortunately, yesterday they found him dead in a tunnel, and they brought him to his village and his family.
If we could shift to Lebanon, General Amidror, I wanted to ask you about one thing that you mentioned, if you could give us any more details. You mentioned that Israel has reason to believe that the new Lebanese president, the former commander of the LAF, Michael Owen, shouldn't be trusted. Can you give us any more insights into that?
Yes, we know that he had, how to say, relations with Hezbollah in the past, and he was not ready as commander of the Lebanese army to fight Hezbollah. The situation was a different situation now. Now he's not in the army, he's the president. Now Hezbollah is much weaker than it was when he was the chief, the commander of the Lebanese army. Now he has more responsibility, and there are Americans inside Beirut with whom he has to speak because they are responsible for the ceasefire and so on and so forth. So I don't know if it will be the same situation as he was the commander of the army, but I think that the optimism that we read around the world is too early optimistic view. I would be more than happy to learn that he was changed and he's more ready to defend the real interest of Lebanon, and ready to be in confrontation with Hezbollah. And today, as I said, it's easier to be in confrontation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is weaker.
General Ayish, can you give us any details on the status of the ceasefire implementation? General Amidror said the IDF has concerns about whether the LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, are fulfilling their end. Is that just a matter of enough LAF personnel coming into the south? Is it an issue of whether Hezbollah has fully withdrawn north of the Litani? What are the IDF concerns?
Let me start with a number. Since the beginning of the ceasefire with the Hezbollah, the IDF have killed 40 Hezbollah terrorists, 40. From that, you can derive the immediate conclusion for two things. One, Hezbollah is not following what was agreed, not implementing it. And the other conclusion is that the IDF is following it carefully and insist to make sure that if they are breaking any paragraph from that agreement, we will hold them accountable. And that's exactly what the IDF did today with one of the incidents, and yesterday and the other days. And still, when you are talking about LAF and their presence in the south, it is definitely not enough to replace the IDF. And at the end of the day, it's not only presence. As General Amidror said, it's activities. It's the ability to confront and to face Hezbollah in first stage to prevent them from going down to the south, and at the same time to make sure that they are not holding any arms and trying to rebuild their capabilities in the south. So far, I'm afraid it's not. I'm not very optimistic, but we will have to wait and see what is going to be implemented in the next 3 or 4 weeks that were left, and to take decisions from there.
Is there a chance of renegotiating the ceasefire to extend Israel's presence in southern Lebanon beyond the 60-day timeline, which runs out later this month, as I understand it? Has there been an Israeli attempt to do that, or is that just an idea that's been floated so far by the IDF?
I will guess two things. The presence of Amos Hochstein in Lebanon yesterday might be connected to your questions. I don't have any formal confirmation about that, but I'm afraid that I guess that this is the situation, and they will have to extend it unless we will see a miracle that everything suddenly is implemented. I'm not too optimistic about that.
Moving to Syria, we saw reports that Israel is still actively conducting strikes inside of Syria. Is there anything you can tell us about what the targets of those strikes are and what they're related to?
Let's start with the decision of the Israeli government. The guidance to the IDF was once the coup took place in Syria, was to remove all strategic capabilities that might either threat Israel or be moved to other entities such as Hezbollah and then threat Israel. And for that sake, the IDF conducted a very aggressive campaign to remove those capabilities. We saw the results of that. Those that were either not identified as a threat in the first 4 days and identified now or are going to be used now by a third party are going to be taken care of within that strategic guidance. That's why we will see in any attempt of smuggling strategic capabilities or military significant capabilities from Syria to Hezbollah, we will see the IDF attacking. In any case that they will try to manufacture something, we will see the IDF attacking and so on and so forth, until we'll be certain about the fact that those threats were totally removed. So everything is within that framework, and that's why we can see every now and then, not only inside Syria, but also not far from the border, the IDF is clearing those capabilities, removing those capabilities. Everything is within the preemptive strategy that was instructed by the cabinet to the IDF.
Has there been any contact between Israel and the new Syrian regime? Any communication?
Maybe General Amidror can answer that, not that I know.
I don't know, but my assessment is that there is, because it's not logic to not having kind of a dialogue under the table with someone who is controlling the state behind the border. We knew how to do it in the past, and we probably know how to do it today. But I don't know. I don't have any knowledge about
it. Speaking of the new preemptive doctrine, I wanted to mention one place that General Amidror left off his list, perhaps surprisingly, Iran. We've heard in recent days that the Iranians have said that they're doubling their number of military exercises that they're conducting now. They're sort of saying that they're getting ready. What is the Israeli thinking on preemptive military action against Iran's nuclear program, and when can we expect it?
In the report that we submitted to the government, in which we recommended to give the defensive system an additional 130 billion shekel, it's almost $30 billion in the next 10 years. We recommended to change dramatically the strategic attitude towards threats outside Israel, and to move from policy of containing to the policy of preventing. And instead of having a policy which recommended to wait and to see, to move to a policy which recommended to act whenever there is a potential for growing threat against Israel. We had in mind Hezbollah and Hamas, of course, and the Islamic Jihad in some ways. But now we have to see how it works all around the Middle East. Not in every case we can do it, not in every case we want to do it. But in principle, that was our recommendation. We were very specific about Iran, and we allocated huge money that Israel will be much better prepared in the future if Israel decides to attack kinetically Iran. Mainly to prevent Iran from going nuclear, but even if there are other needed reasons, for example, retaliation after what was done by the Iranians twice against Israel, and Israel decided that because they launched almost 500 projectiles into Israel, Israel retaliated, not connected at all to the nuclear facility, just to show the Iranians that there is a price and to eliminate part of their capability to produce missiles. Our recommendation is about both, that Israel should be in a position to launch long, massive attacks on Iran, if will be a need, and to build the capability to destroy as much as possible from the nuclear efforts of the Iranians. How far can we do it? How much is needed? When is the best time to do it? All these questions we are dealing within ourselves in closed doors, and it's not for the public. But the principle is clear. We are building capability, and we are going to invest huge money on that.
On this topic, let me also commend to the audience an op-ed that came out today in the New York Post by my colleagues Mike Makovsky and John Hanna, arguing that the Trump administration has a great opportunity here to join with Israel in destroying Iran's nuclear program before it's too late. So for those who haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. But let me now turn to questions from the audience. If you do have a question for Generals Amidror or Ayish, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A function. Let me start with a question from Alan Makovsky to you, General Amidror. He notes that you said that Israel supports the Kurds, but that assistance is limited. Do you mean that there actually is some assistance to the Kurds? And if so, which Kurdish groups is Israel assisting and how?
We are not speaking about our relations with the Kurds. It's but we declared sympathy to the Kurds' cause. The Minister of Foreign Affairs spoke with the one who is responsible for foreign relations in the Kurdish area inside Syria. What I said it to practically to help them with materials. It's not easy because you have to do it. We have to do it over Syria, so it's not easy. But it's clear that we are sympathizing the efforts of the Kurds to have independent or autonomy within the Syrian system. Depends what will happen in Syria, and we think that all the effort should be done to stop the Turks from attacking the Kurds.
All right, thank you. Let me turn to a question from Jack Kraft, who asks, since Gaza was given to the Palestinian Authority as part of the Oslo Accord to create a peace treaty, and the fact the treaty was never executed, why does Israel have to give Gaza back?
I don't know what is the legal situation of the Gaza and what, according to the international law, should or should not be done. I'm not sure there is any way to learn from the international, but I want to speak about the Israeli interest. We don't have an interest to control another 2 million Palestinians and to be responsible to provide them water, food, education, health, security, whatever. It's not our interest. And this is why I think that at the end of the day, Israel should not control the Gaza Strip, and the Gaza Strip should be like Area A in the West Bank. Someone, and I don't know who, will be responsible for the civilian side and the need of the civilians, and Israel will be responsible for the security, preventing any force from building any capabilities that can be used against Israel. Other than that, it is not our interest to be responsible to 2 million Palestinians in an area which is almost totally destroyed, and someone will have to pay for rebuilding.
Let me turn to a question from Josh Katzen, who asks whether there is any Turkish resupply of Hezbollah.
No, Turks and Hezbollah are not in good relations. And as far as I know, there is no any supply from Turkey to Hezbollah. And anyhow, the new rulers of Damascus are enemies of Hezbollah. They hate Hezbollah. They hate the Iranians. They had been butchered by both under the Assad regime. And, you know, in the long run, the Turks might think about using Hezbollah, but at the moment, it's not in the cards.
And last question from Al Berlenberg. How much of the strategic supply or strategic threat, I believe in Syria, has been removed by the IDF to this point?
I would say around 80 to 90%. There are certain things that you can say almost 100. We don't use that number because, you know, they might always surprise us. But most of the strategic capabilities we're taking out, to include some of the elements of the supply chain that will prevent them from manufacturing it soon.
Can you give us any indication of what you think might still be left, or what seems to be mostly eliminated?
No, if we know about something which remains, we will destroy it.
We'll go after it.
All right. Well, with that, General Ayish, General Amidror, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Blaise.
I greatly appreciate your
Thank you,
insights.
Blaise. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everyone who joined in. As always, you can find our latest, including Mike Makovsky and John Hanna's op-ed on our website at jinsa.org. And in the meantime, thank you, and we'll see you next week. Have a good afternoon, everyone.